Can y'all hear me?
It is.
Yes, we can.
Sorry, my Zoom is messing up.
Well, we apologize for being a little bit slow here. We're trying to get the technology going 100%. We're about 88.5 right now. But that is a big question. Hey, take a break.
That's fine. Technology is always fun, as I couldn't get mine to work either, so it's okay.
That's a good one. 88%, that's 8% wasted.
Okay.
We have somebody who apparently didn't get the link that we're trying to get in here
But
as
it
well.
was on, if you look, it's down at the bottom of that email, so I don't know what. Search by Bonnie in your email.
You sent to
Very short.
should be seeing John.
Very well.
Okay. Don't let me go like that. Also, phone number you can call her. So I don't want to answer my phone.
Nice. It's good. Earpieces are good. Those wireless that I have, like apparently they're really good. Everybody always hears me like everybody.
Well, we appreciate everybody being here. Now, are we allowed to bring our masks down while we're talking, or just the presenters? Okay.
I'm just gonna shout through mine.
If you feel comfortable, bring your
We're all
masks down.
Yeah, we're all 16.
I'm sorry.
I said, we're all distant.
Yes, since, I was about to say that since we are socially distanced, then we're going to take our masks off. And there we are at the top. So we've got Carrie, as our vice chair, is here. Casey Emery's here. Herbert Williams. Those are the members that are present at the CTC meeting at Citizens Tower. And we need to know who is on right now via Zoom.
This is Florence Ann. I'm here.
And also,
Cassandra Camargo, I'm here.
Perfect. Oh, and is that Caleb?
Yes, Caleb is here with me. I hope that's okay. My 1.5-year-old grandson.
Yes, that's perfect.
And we just had Jonathan Ziegler.
And Jonathan, can you confirm that you're with us too?
yes, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. Bonnie, you have all that written down then? We've got a quorum. So, Carrie, I will give it to you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order and welcome everybody to this meeting of the Citizens Traffic Commission. It's been a while since we've met. 2020 kind of threw us a curve. And so here we are today. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting.
Motion
I move. I second that.
Second by Herbert.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Minutes have been accepted.
Perfect.
Are there any public citizens here today that have to make comments? No one's in today. Okay, so no citizens' comments. We'll move on to regular business. New business is to nominate and vote on new chair and vice chair officers for 2020-2021. My understanding is that Lance Rampy and Michelle Hunter are not coming back.
Correct.
In this period. Herbert and Casey and I kind of had a discussion about whether it's absolutely necessary to do this today, because we didn't have the opportunity to talk with the folks that are calling in by Zoom. And I'll ask, is it a must that we do this today?
I'm good. And just table this until next month. That means we'll for sure have a meeting
Yes.
in August. And we'll have a couple new members. So we've got 2 new members coming on.
Okay.
And the terms for chair and vice chair expire. September's the new date. So I think we have a little bit of time. We're fine.
Okay. So basically, everyone that has joined us by Zoom, what we'd like is if you would let us know if you would like to serve as the chair or vice chair. I'm happy to serve as the vice chair again. I'd be happy to serve as the chair for the next term. But if there are other people that are willing and would like to serve, I'd like to know who you are, and then we can put that up for a vote next time and get that taken care of.
Okay.
Bonnie, Jonathan Ziegler just arrived by Zoom.
Okay.
If you didn't get that right.
Yes, sir.
I'm on. I got it.
So I guess I will accept a motion to table number 4 until the next meeting.
We'll do it for
There you go.
I'm sorry, I forgot about that. I thought maybe the person was monkey driver, but. Okay.
So all in favor of tabling this until our August meeting? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Carries. All right, moving on to item 5, the work session. We're going to have a presentation regarding the traffic control guidelines.
Yes. So, good morning for number 1. The work session begins today with 2 presentations. We're actually have 2 by 2 different people. There are senior staff in the Traffic Engineering and Operations Department. The first of these presentations is going to give a plethora of information on all things related to the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program, what we call the NTMP. And then it's going to include some actual data as well. That's going to be given by Mr. Bragg over there in just a second. But I will let you know the second presentation is going to introduce the national standards that the state and municipal entities, cities and states have got to abide by when we're installing, for this particular item, regulatory signs. So let me first introduce David Bragg. He's got his Bachelor of Science from Texas Tech University in Electrical Engineering. He started his way up there. I've got 3 bullet points I'm going to tell you about. He has been with the city since 2006. In his 14 years with traffic, he's held positions that include pretty much all aspects of traffic engineering and communications, not only radio, but twisted pair copper and fiber, the new thing. He's currently the department's capital improvement project and safety manager, and he has subordinates under him. Really in his day-to-day, he oversees the capital improvement projects. He manages a team of fiber optic technicians to install and maintain not only the city's fiber optic plant, but TxDOT's fiber optic plant. And then he also, one of his very busy jobs since COVID has been managing the citizen request system. With everybody home, they might have been driving around in their cars a lot more, and we have had many, many requests for citizen requests. So anyway, without further ado, David, go ahead.
Good morning. Hope y'all are having a good day. Now, Sharman promised a plethora of information, so we'll see what I can do. So So the neighborhood traffic management program, it was implemented in 2015. So we're 5 years into it, and just kind of wanted to present an overview to y'all. It was presented to CTC 5+ years ago. Just kind of, this is where we are, this is how it works, and kind of where we may be going with it. So start out just a little brief history. About 8 or 9 years ago, traffic operations was tasked with developing some sort of program that could help us dictate what would be allowed in streets, both in the middle and on the sides of streets, to help control neighborhood speeds. The city as a whole, which Sergeant McGuire would probably attest to this, we all began getting a plethora of requests involving neighborhood speeds. And so we wanted some way to address these speeds, give tools to the neighborhoods and the city to help address these speeds. So we began researching the issue. We contacted sister cities, both within the state and around the country, that had similar type programs, trying to find out what we wanted with the program. Did we want one device to be allowed to try to handle the speeding issues, or we want to give an array of different devices out there for folks to have out in their streets? So we also had internal stakeholder meetings with a variety of different city departments, including law enforcement, fire department, our safety group, engineering, a bunch of different city departments, just to make sure that we could accomplish our goals in slowing down traffic, and also allow those departments to maintain their functionality. We didn't want to slow down response times. We wanted trash trucks to be able to deal with whatever we put there, and not, us not tear up their trucks, and them not tear up whatever we have out there. So we had a couple of meetings with different departments to make sure we were all on the same page moving forward with the program. Once we sort of centered in on some devices that we wanted to offer, we actually tested out speed cushions, which we early on recognized that would be a device that would handle most speeding issues within neighborhood streets. So we tested speed cushions up on Maxfield Drive, which is a city street on the municipal hill, which is used by a lot of city vehicles daily, different size, anything from cars to large trucks. It's near a fuel site. It's where LP&L is, and a lot of different operation shops are in the area. We want to see, hey, will our devices, will these speed cushions hold up to that sort of traffic? And then also, does it damage vehicles in any way? And we had successful testing of the devices up there, and said, hey, let's move forward with this program. So in January of 2015, or I'm sorry, jump ahead a little bit. In November of 2014, we actually presented the program to the Citizens Traffic Commission, and it was voted on and approved by the commission and sent to council for adoption in January of 2015. It's an extensive packet. It's not just speed cushions. It's a variety of different tools that we can install for both neighborhood streets, alleys, and then also arterial and collector type streets. We received our first application for the program in 2015, and actually did our first speed cushion install in July of 2016. So we talked a little about traffic calming devices. What is a traffic calming device? So we consider that a device that's a physical object that self-enforces a certain driver behavior. If you think of a median in your way, it will prevent you from turning, whereas if you just place a sign in a spot, you're still physically allowed to turn, but just advised not to. So we were looking for physical objects that would deter speeds. Something that would not inflict damage to vehicles, and something that also allows drivers to maintain control. So in other words, you don't want to put a normal speed bump like you would see in some of the parking lots around town. We all have a parking lot where there's a speed bump that's kind of harsh to drive over and would be impossible to do at a normal speed going down a residential street. So we wanted something that would allow drivers to maintain control so they're not swerving wildly and present other issues to us. So we settled in on, like I said, really 3 different areas of concern: alleys, neighborhood streets, and then collectors and arterials. So for next several slides, I'm just going to go through and show you what our program offers for each of those scenarios. So for alleys, all we offer are speed bumps. This is a prefabricated device that we order and just bolt down to an alley. It has to be a concrete alley, which that's where we have the issues with speeding typically. If you have a dirt alley, usually the nature of the alley maintains speeds on its own. So it's pre-constructed from recycled rubber. It's a really hard material. We try to install them 300 to 600 feet apart. That depends on where dumpsters are, where possible access to driveways exists, and that sort of thing. So sometimes that range isn't completely met. That's what we strive for, though. These devices work, as you can think of going over in parking lots where you have a speed bump, people slow down. They have a great cost to benefit ratio. They're very effective in slowing down traffic. So we've actually installed these in 2 different alleys currently. So next we have these devices that help maintain speeds on residential streets. So these are available to streets that have houses that front them, so not the sides of houses. So houses that front them within neighborhoods. So the first one I'm going to talk about is a speed cushion. This is actually a picture from 13th Street west of Quaker. This was one of the very first installs we did. So as you can see, it's not like you may have seen in other cities where we have speed cushion all the way across the road. It is in sections, but they're installed in such a way that they can't be avoided. The sections help both with cost, but also they help out aspects of the street, such as street water flow, drainage. The large fire trucks and large vehicles, they can actually straddle them. A normal car, if you try to go between them, you get a tire on one side or the other. So they're very effective in slowing down speed. The way we install them with sections, bicycles and pedestrians, possibly joggers, sometimes driving the street, can easily get around them. And similar to the speed bumps, they have a great cost to benefit ratio. Another device, which we don't have these installed, it's in our packet. It's a speed table. This is similar to a speed cushion, the difference being it's wider up at the top. So instead of a few feet up at the top, like a speed cushion has, this will have 5 to 6 feet of flat section with a slope on each side. And that's something I didn't discuss over here. The speed cushions, it's different from a speed bump in that you go up and then there is a flat section you go down. There's a short flat section at the top. So that's what allows vehicles to go a normal speed down a residential street. So going back to the speed tables, again, they're very similar to a speed cushion, just a wider flat portion at the top. They're not as cost effective as speed cushions. They do the job about as well based on other cities' data, but they are more expensive than speed cushion. So really, speed cushion, in my opinion, is a better option just because we can put more out there for the same cost. Next, this is an option. Again, we do not have any of these installed in the city. This is a raised intersection. So as you look at this, the black portion is a slope. and the red portion up top is level. So the entire intersection is brought up. It is an effective device for intersection speed control. Makes it more pedestrian friendly at the intersection just because vehicles are slowing down for it. It can negatively impact emergency services. In other words, they can't straddle this.
Yeah,
They're going to go over it one way or another. It's going to slow them down. So another point is they are very costly. So this is an option we have in our packet, but we do not have any of these installed. This next one is also for intersection control, traffic circles. So traffic circles come in many different sizes and options, anything from small residential traffic circles, which we have a few located around town, to larger ones within neighborhoods, such as this one. This is in North Overton. And then we have huge traffic circles for large interchanges. So really what we look at in the packet are the smaller ones for neighborhoods. They are effective. You can't go through the intersection without slowing down. They can be difficult to retrofit existing intersections just because if you look at the geometry of this, the corners have been shaped in such a way that allows traffic to smoothly go around it. And in a normal neighborhood, that would require land acquisition, that sort of thing. So it's not always easy to retrofit. It can be done, not always easy. And that depending on the size and shape, design, they can be moderately expensive. So next, we're going to look at our options for collector and arterial streets. And so we use the word collector street in many different ways, our department. And, these meetings, I know we've talked about collector streets in the past. As our packet terms collector streets, it's a street within a neighborhood that has houses that the sides of them butt up to the street. So typically around town, those are going to be north-south collectors. Not always the case, but just in a typical neighborhood, that's what it is. So the first option we have for these sorts of streets, it's a median. We're all familiar with medians. They may result in the reduction of speed and traffic noise. Usually speed and noise are coupled together as we think about it in a neighborhood. The way that they reduce speed is they narrow the lanes. And so it feels more narrow for a vehicle, so it typically slows down speeds. Similar to traffic circles, the effectiveness of these devices, it depends on the design of it. So we've seen them installed all around town, anywhere from 15 to 20 feet wide or greater, down to 12 to 18 inches wide. So depending on, and the length as well, depends on, the effectiveness depends on the length of the median as well. So they come in all different sizes and options. Next, we're looking at a traffic football, is what this is called. Probably see why it's called a football. So this is essentially a median that doesn't extend very far. So it's a shaped median. It slows traffic by just guiding it around the football, if you will. Again, it slows traffic down by narrowing the width of the lanes. And it also makes the driver deflect, curve just a little as they go around it. We don't have anything that I would call a traffic football installed in town, but it is an option in our packet. Another device that narrows the lanes is called a choker. So these are devices that are not installed for the full length of the street, just sections that narrow down the lanes again. Instead of putting them in the middle of the street, we put them on the sides. Definitely slows down vehicles. The negative aspects of putting something on the sides of the street is that it can take away bicycle lanes, possible parking options, that sort of thing. It does increase pedestrian visibility. So in other words, if you can picture a pedestrian in this, so for example, for pedestrian crossing, because there are no ramps, but if there was a pedestrian there, the pedestrian would be in front of a driver approaching the section that sticks out in the roadway. So the driver would see a pedestrian a little easier. And it also decreases the amount of street width the pedestrian has to cross. So it's safer for pedestrians for a couple of reasons. Next, we're going to talk about chicanes. So chicane basically is a device that makes a street snake. So it slows down vehicles by making them turn every now and then. So they're little small curves installed into a street. These devices are more effective installed with development. So in other words, on the front end as a street is being created, if you create a street that curves, you can usually have more control as far as the amount of curvature and it's just a better setup than installing something like this out into the street. So these can be very expensive. If you think of a choker or a traffic football type installation, that's just in one spot. This continues for a segment, for a stretch of road. So it can be costly depending on the design. Next, we're talking about diverters, or what you call a half closure. So basically, this is just a median that cuts across an intersection catty corner, forcing traffic to turn at the intersection. It decreases the number of conflict points because folks are not turning in front of straight through traffic. And it can increase pedestrian safety. It gives them, not in this picture, but if designed correctly, it gives them a spot to cross in the middle of the intersection. Again, it restricts through traffic, which means it could increase travel times, which again may negatively impact emergency services. So those are diverters. And then next we have a cul-de-sac. Everybody knows what a cul-de-sac is. Walks through traffic, similar to a diverter. Definitely reduces speeds and volumes. It's difficult to retrofit an existing street with a cul-de-sac. So when a cul-de-sac is normally designed, there's a radius that goes onto what would normally be private property in an existing street setup. So it's difficult to design a cul-de-sac after the street's already been built. And again, by blocking cut-through traffic or blocking traffic, it does increase travel times. So those are the different devices we offer as a part of the program. Again, really at this point, we've only installed 2 of those just because we focused on the neighborhoods, which was the main purpose of this. We wanted to give the toolbox for many different streets, but focus on neighborhood speeds, which is where most of our citizen requests about speeding come from. So what is the process involved to get something like a speed cushion or a speed bump installed? So like I said, we have the neighborhood traffic management program. So this is a packet we have online that we frequently mail and email to folks that have questions about the program. Now that we have several installations out there, people see them driving around and think, hey, how can I get that installed on my street? So, news is kind of getting out. The number of requests for these has definitely picked up the last, as we progress through the years. So to get it started, there's a short application somebody would have to fill out that basically just addresses their contact information and the area of concern. So once we receive that, we do a speed study on that section of roadway. So what we'll do is we'll put the rubber count tubes out there and we set them out for a 24-hour period and we collect them and we collect the 85th percentile speeds from those devices. So going back to other meetings in the past, we set speed limits with information such as 85th percentile. So that's why that's important in this case. If the 85th percentile speeds in either direction are above 35 miles an hour, the city views that as a speeding issue on a residential street where speed limits are 30 miles an hour. If that is the case, the street is eligible for city funding of possible speed cushions. If it's not the case, so let's say traffic at the 85th percentile speeds are 25 miles an hour, you can still get them installed, but it would be funded by the neighborhood itself. So it's still an option. We don't want to say, hey, these are not allowed unless there's a speeding concern, unless there's an identifiable speeding issue. But it's at the it's up to the neighborhood to pay for those.
Now, one question on that. Given that Lubbock there's a lot of development going on. So taking some of the knowledge based on previous neighborhoods and where they're set up, and as the developers develop these neighborhoods, why not automatically force the developer to put these things in place so it eliminates them in the future? That way, the cost is right up front with the developer as he is developing that particular neighborhood. So we don't have it on the back end.
So we definitely encourage development to be designed in such a way that it cuts down on speeds. And it's not just speed cushion. So speed cushion is really a way to retrofit the current situation. In the development process, you can do things such as narrow the street width, or even just the way it's designed. Is it a curvy street, or the street's long or short before you have to turn? We encourage development to occur in that way. At this point, we don't have a way of requiring that. So, it's something that we encourage, but don't have a mechanism for it.
Well, every developer has to have a permit to build. You give them in the beginning.
Sure.
David, if you don't mind. We do, when developers are coming through, you'll probably notice as you look back in developments in the 1980s, 66 in Memphis comes to mind for me. I mean, you started seeing some non-linear streets because Lubbock's on a grid system. So you're starting to see development do exactly that. It's like you said, the speed bumps and some of these are for retrofitting, but we've got a lot of subdivisions coming in with cul-de-sacs. They're at an angle. The narrow streets, Vintage is a really good example, I guess. Maybe overkill on narrow street. So you're starting to see a lot of the subdivisions not necessarily following our grid pattern. In that grid pattern, you got these long streets and residential that are wide open that just entice speed. And that's where this neighborhood traffic management program comes in handy, because it allows that neighborhood control of their own neighborhood and looking at doing speed cushions or something like that.
Right.
In development, we are encouraging, like David said, encouraging new ideas, non-grid pattern layouts. You're seeing more cul-de-sacs, but we still want the circulation to occur. We just don't want it to occur in a linear fashion. And new subdivisions are doing that.
But that's a great question, because it's definitely something that has changed through the years for the positive. And, as you talk about development, issues that occurred decades ago, as far as those are the streets we're retrofitting now.
Right.
It's not typically newer neighborhoods. So it's older, well-established type areas. So yeah, once we do the speed study and determine the funding source, the possible funding source, our office develops what we call a treatment plan, and this is just a design showing the street in question and where we would install speed cushions, speed bumps if it's an alley.
Right.
Again, I spoke to this on the speed bumps. It's not as easy as just drawing a line. Hey, this is where it's going to be. We're trying to balance a few things here. We want spacing to be appropriate, but we also don't want it right in the middle of somebody's house. We don't want to put it where when they look out their kitchen window, there's a sign for the speed cushion. So we have advisory signs saying 25 miles an hour everywhere we place these. So we try to strike a balance between accomplishing the goal, but also not negatively impacting one particular citizen. And so what we do is once we have the treatment plan in place, we meet with the citizen that initiated the application and anybody else in the neighborhood that they would like to come to the meeting and discuss our options. So, sometimes it's just the one person, they want to handle it themselves. And we've had some of these meetings where we've had 15 or 20 folks within the neighborhood come to that meeting. And at that meeting, what we do is we hand them the treatment plan. We discuss that. We see if they have any issues with our proposed placements and answer any questions they might have. So from there on, what happens is we also give them a petition. So this petition is a list of addresses, a list of homes that we've identified will be affected by the possibility of these cushions getting installed. So what we want to do is solve the problem, but we also want it to be something that the neighborhood is behind. So not just one person possibly. And so what we do is we do supply this petition, and once they have the petition, they have 3 months to get 80% of the affected homeowners' signatures in that area. So in that, when I talk about affected area, depending on where cul-de-sacs are placed, the geometry of a neighborhood, it could be 1 block, 2 blocks. You might have streets with cul-de-sacs that tee into the street in question, and that would add to the affected area. So they have 3 months to get 80% of the signatures of that area of homeowners. And once we receive the petition back, we verify signatures and install the devices within about a month or so of that day. So, under ideal circumstances, there's a 3-month window here that's really up to the citizen. And we've had setups where, we'll get it back in a couple weeks, and we've had some that take the full 3 months to turn it back in. So depending on how long that stage takes, it could take anywhere from 4 to 6 months or so from the initiation of the process until we get them installed. So, and it's something that we encourage, the petition process, it's something that we encourage citizens getting others on board and meeting with us, because what we've seen is it's easier if you can break up a neighborhood into sections, and you cover the area you live closest to, and you cover your area, and just kind of a divide and conquer approach seems to work really well. So that's the process to get them installed. So the question we had after we started installing this is, how effective are they? Do they work? Are they doing what we think they are? So this is the data of 4 different speed cushion installations that we have. As you can see, the before and after data on both the 85th percentile speeds and the actual volumes dropped quite a bit. So, 58th Street was our worst case scenario before, 40 mile an hour, 85th percentile speeds, well out of the range that we're looking for. We dropped them by about 10 miles an hour. So that's pretty good speed reduction. And to clarify, 58th Street, this section is between Indiana and Memphis. So, and there were a lot of vehicles, there still are a lot of vehicles that use that street. So that is one that we, when we get calls, most people who have seen them see them on 58th Street. It's highly visible section of roadway. So yeah, we've done a great job at dropping speeds and volumes. It's hard to know for sure. Our speculation is the vehicles that are not using that are cut through traffic. Typically cut through traffic speeds because they're going to the other side of the neighborhood. They don't live on that street. So, we're accomplishing two things there. They're both positive.
Hey, David, this is Jonathan. You get Zigner?
Sir.
Hey, I just happen to live on 13th Street, and that picture is actually right in front of our house. We have a set of those speed cushions right there. Question is, when was the data done? Was that done right after y'all put those in? Because I think they've been there for about 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah, so, and I'm not sure on 13th Street itself. What I can tell you that we collected the speeds on all of these, and it was anywhere from 2 to 6 months after the installation.
Well, they've done great in the deal. The only reason I'm asking, I think a lot of people has gotten used to them now, because probably here this past year, we've seen cars flying down through the street again, and really it's the big trucks. They don't seem to, the big jacked up trucks. And 13th Street is the only through street, there through Rush between Quaker and Slide, and all the tech students from Greek Circle kind of cut through there. And I mean, it just seems like in the last 6 or 8 months or year that I don't know if they've gotten used to them or if y'all done counts lately, because man, they're back up just flying through there like they used to before the cushions were there.
Well, so I'll tell you what, currently we are not doing any speed counts or volume counts, just due to the COVID affecting driving habits. Everybody's kind of off it a little bit, but yeah, we'll go back. I'd like to get data and see what we see there.
Yeah. I didn't know if they're, I know a lot of people along our street, or I don't know if this has been submitted or not. They've been talking about seeing about adding them because right now they stop right at Toledo. And I think they were talking about seeing if they can get them added like from Toledo to Slide to help slow that traffic down before they get to Toledo, because they're only there basically from Toledo to Quaker.
Sure.
Anyways, I'm just curious. I mean, the data shows they slowed down, but I mean, we got a set right in front of our house that seems I've actually threw a trash can in front of a truck to get them to stop. So when I was out mowing the lawn, they're just flying through there.
That device is in the appendix of our. But yeah, definitely. I'd be interested to see, what speeds we are seeing there.
Yeah. I'm just curious. I didn't know if these were done. Like I said, right after y'all, right after you put them in, they were great. I mean, they're still great. I think they're just that, if prolonged, and people are getting used to them, and then now speeds are back up and they're just flying over them like they're not even there.
All right, well, thank you. So, 5 years into the program, what are some lessons we've learned from what we've done? It's easy to do your research on the front end and think, hey, this is perfect, we're gonna move forward and all that. After you use it for a little while, you see some ways we can make it better. So, one of the things I've identified here is to decrease, I can't talk, the number of options available. So, in other words, raised intersections and speed tables, they're both costly options that are similar to traffic circles and speed cushions. So we have traffic circles and speed cushions implemented both by development and after the fact by various different departments throughout the city. So why not just focus on those? If a raised intersection is too costly to install, maybe we should remove it from the package. Another thing I'd like to look into is better define residential streets. So on the front end, the definition of a residential street was a home in a neighborhood that fronts that street. So, and then if it was a home in a neighborhood that the side of it was to the street, as you'll recall that's what we termed a collector street. So what we didn't anticipate is streets that have homes that both front and have to the side. So, we didn't anticipate that being an issue, and we've stumbled across several women. So, create a better definition of a residential street as it relates to these speed devices. And then also, like you mentioned earlier, we want to more strongly encourage traffic calming features as part of development. That's definitely a time to address it. It's easier to implement, it's cheaper to implement, and it makes the neighborhood more appealing typically to the residents if you can build a neighborhood that speeds are under control. So, that's something we'd like to push a little stronger and see what we can get done there. So with that, do y'all have any questions? Hopefully that was a plethora of information as promised by Charlene. So.
Great information.
Yeah, okay.
One thing that I was going to mention, and David can go into it more, is that we plan to bring our revised NTMP back to this group. Did you already mention that?
I did not.
Okay.
No.
Probably in October, maybe November, and then take it back to City Council to be reapproved with a few changes that you guys would approve later on. So that's sort of a time frame. You have any other questions? I know that wasn't a question.
I have one question. It's kind of a chicken or the egg type question. Is that, do you have very often where a person comes in and puts an application in, you do all your studies, and then they go out and the majority of the neighborhood says, no, we absolutely don't want that. And so you spend all that time doing that. Do you ask when they come in to apply, have they spoken with any of their neighbors? Is there any discussion going on within the neighborhood to kind of save y'all time if you knew beforehand that people were wanting it? But then you don't know if it's going to be effective or even work until you go out and do the study.
Mm-hmm.
So,
we have had those situations. And we, it's our train of thought that we continue through the steps and let's see how it turns out, because it does take staff time. However, we don't want to be the ones to deny it. Let's see. This is a program that's really for the citizens. It's something that they get a lot of input on, and so we don't want to be the ones to step in and say no. But we have had that. We have citizens who say, "Oh yeah, everybody's gonna be on board with this," and then a month later they call and say, "Look, I'm not gonna be able to get the signatures." So it does happen. One thing I didn't touch on is once these devices are installed, they have to be out there for a year and then go through the same process as installation to get them removed. So in other words, it does involve a petition, right? 80% of the affected area for removal. So.
One other thing that I wanted to let y'all know about is he's going through a citizen request system. I know that there's been approximately 35 calls. They're speeding on my street. They're speeding on my street. So we send them either snail mail or email them a packet, an NTMP packet. And we've only had, out of those 35 since the first of the year, we've had 3 applications returned to us. I don't know if they're just curious, if they don't know their neighbors. There was one gentleman I spoke with, and he said, I live in a neighborhood where I don't know neighbors and I don't feel comfortable going to their houses. But we still send him a packet.
right.
But there's all sorts of scenarios there. But 3 applications is all you've gotten back, correct?
Yeah, we've received 2 back, and that's over a 3-month window. So, and like I mentioned, this program, I feel like it's picking up speed. Each week, each month that passes, we get more and more requests for them. I think it's just because we have more out there. When we didn't have any installed, a lot of folks didn't know it existed. So it kind of advertises for itself. it's also worth pointing out when we receive these sorts of calls, I always give them the option, would you like for me to contact PD and see if they'll, send folks out there to enforce, which some of them do not want that. Many do, and we do that. And we also give them the option for us to place our radar speed trailers, which is the trailer that gives drivers feedback as far as how fast they go. So, we have other things than just this program, but really for the long haul, you need something out there that's not going to be gone in a week.
Well, a lot of it too is that that same individual or citizens, if they realize that a lot of these neighborhoods have associations or, neighborhood associations that, if you don't know your neighbor, well, maybe you go talk to somebody that's in the neighborhood association, maybe they know that neighbor. So technically then that person is really not communicating within their own neighborhood.
That's right.
So if they would participate, then they may get to know them or those neighbors, and that same neighborhood association could help you out when it comes to petitions, because you're wasting resources putting something out that 95% of the neighborhood don't want. But if you went to the neighborhood association, hey, have a meeting on, you discuss blah, blah, blah. Oh, no, we've already tried that. We took that out, blah, blah, blah. Or, no, that's a good idea. So now you have the community already there on board.
Well, sort of along that lines, probably the smoothest petition process we've seen was 58th Street. And so what they did is they passed out flyers on every house. And they said, hey, we're going to have a meeting at this person's house to talk about this. And that was before they met with us to go over
That's what I'm saying.
the study.
Because every neighborhood, there's
petition plan for
43 in Lubbock. There are 43 neighborhood associations.
Yeah. So, it's, and the great thing about that is I may not know the person 5 doors down, but my neighbor may. And so, you can piecemeal it together and get signatures pretty quickly that way.
Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
And I'm very new to this committee, so on these new neighborhoods that they're developing, does the city help in developing those streets, or is it totally on whoever owns that land and they put the streets in after they come together with the plans and kind of this is how we want it to look? Or
Well,
how does that work?
I'll let Wood.
Yeah, it is their land, they develop it, but we do have specifications and requirements that they have to meet.
Okay.
And so the width of the streets, depending on where it is and if it's a collector, and of course what they build and how they build it has to meet our standards, and same with the water infrastructure and the sewer infrastructure, they build those as well. And so the size of the water lines and placements of water lines. So there is a general guidelines that they have to meet, so they've got to put it this way, you got a puzzle piece that has to fit in the box, so to speak. After that, how they lay it out, are they doing the width of the lots, the sizes of the lots, and that's up to the land development.
Okay. Because I don't know if some of these ways to calm the traffic might be more expensive than them just putting in regular streets. And if so, if we're going to encourage that, does the city say, hey, we'll go in part of the way with you, pay for part of this if you'll do it this way initially? That way we're not looking at larger expenses on the backside.
Quick answer, that's no. We really don't participate, but we do have a input on that, and we sit down a lot of the times with development when they are looking at pre-plats, and we'll have meetings with all of our departments. The fire marshal gets involved, and so it's more than just our planning department, and that gets involved and looks at it. Solid waste, how's the solid waste collection happen and all there. So we're looking at it from several different departments.
Yeah.
But whether or not they choose to go a grid pattern or more cul-de-sacs or less cul-de-sacs and the size of lots, that is their choice. And you're right, they do look at it for square footage of sellable property. I mean, it comes down to money always.
Yeah, but I think a lot of them, just because I've been working Canterra selling tickets, and they've got it pretty well sectioned off where it's going to be hard to speed through there. I think that they want to make the neighborhoods appealing to people that are going to have their families living there.
It's a new philosophy than what was happening probably in the 70s and 80s, and a lot of them don't want if you don't live in this neighborhood, I don't want you driving through the neighborhood. I mean, it's the home buyers. I mean, it's a market-driven value product. And so those people that are looking to buy a house, they don't want to be on a house that's a pass-through street. And so that in itself encourages what we're wanting to see.
Right.
Do we know if anybody on Zoom had a question? Unmute yourself and ask it if you have anything. Right?
Turn the mouse over to Will.
Okay, well, thank you, David. That was a plethora of information. We appreciate it. So our second presenter is Will Cummings. As he comes up here, I'll let you know a little bit about him. He's got his Bachelor's of Science from Texas Tech in Civil Engineering. He's a licensed professional engineer in the state of Texas, as is David, and holds his Professional Traffic Operations Engineer Certification, PTOE. It's the newest type of certification for traffic engineers, and he's the sole City of Lubbock PTOE at this time. He's been with the City of Lubbock since 2009. In his 11 years, he's held associate engineer and engineering positions, primarily in the Traffic Management Center, which I think all of y'all know is where we get the video feed from TxDOT as well as city cameras, and also operate their dynamic message boards. We also have a Advanced Traffic Management System, ATMS. So the components of that on a day-to-day basis will program those and troubleshoots those. The computerized traffic control system is the brain, the big brain that brings all the data together, and it is what big cities, and we're one of those, use to communicate with our traffic control devices. There's, besides the controllers, there's conflict monitors, vehicle and pedestrian detection, emergency preemption, and the city has its own pan tilt zoom cameras. So that is what he does on a day-to-day basis. So he's the perfect one to talk about stop sign control. We call him our MUTCD guru, and he'll tell you what that means.
I always get called on for the really technical presentations, so sorry.
So you're gonna make it real simple then.
Something like that. So, what led to this discussion is one of the questions we get is, well, these are all the options that you have for speed control. Why don't you just put up a bunch of stop signs? Stop signs slow people down. Why don't we do that? Okay. So I'm going to talk about how we apply stop signs and other traffic control devices and the legal and ethical standards that we have to follow when we install any traffic control device. So we'll introduce the Texas Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. What is it? Why do we use it? And then how is it codified into law? And what are the statements on stop sign control in the MUTCD? And then we'll talk about the proper use of traffic control, such as at intersections to assign right of way, or in those sections of roadway that are not at an intersection where you see the operating speeds. So this is the TMUTCD. This is the Texas version of the federal MUTCD. So there are about 7 or 8 states that adopt a state version of the federal manual. The rest of the states just adopt the federal manual. Really the differences are pretty minor. Texas takes out a lot of stuff that's in the federal manual and then adds a little bit. California adds a ton of stuff that's not in the federal manual. But basically you have to just generally comply with the federal manual, but you're allowed to make some changes here and there. This guides engineers in the proper application of traffic control devices. We'll get into why that's important. And then it's an 840-page manual in 9 parts. So not a real good read. If you have insomnia, it's pretty good for that. But we'll be talking about part 2, signs, because that's where stop signs are. But this also helps us in all other applications of traffic control devices, such as signals, rail crossings, that sort of thing. Temporary traffic control, that's big. A little bit of the history of the MUTCD. So this was not some federal mandate that just came about in the last 10 years or 20 years. It actually started in the early 1900s. So as the first center line was painted in Michigan in 1911, and then the first traffic signal in 1914, First stop sign, 1915, and then the first official route signs as a part of a maintenance function, 1918, three-color traffic signal, 1920, and then post-World War I, World War II, when the country really started becoming mobile, you started seeing a lot of motoring groups and state and federal groups get together and say, we need to make this uniform so that if I drive from Texas to Nebraska, I don't see 10 different shapes of signs and 10 different colors of signs that all mean the same thing. And so the federal MUTCD was born in 1935 as a 166-page 4-part manual. So it has grown quite a bit since then. So AASHTO, which is the American Association of State Highway Officials, they are a big proponent of having uniform traffic control devices and uniform design throughout the country. And that way, as you drive from city to city, county to county, state to state, you expect that a speed limit sign is always a white rectangle with black text, that sort of thing. So why do we use it? Well, we just talked about that. Uniformity of traffic control devices ensures road users can travel between city, states, and regions with ease. The MUTCD standards are based on research, which is applied across the nation through federal highway. So before anything makes it in the manual, they test it. They don't test it in one city or two cities. They usually test it in tens of cities. And then there's an experimentation process that is formalized that if you want to try a new device out and it's never been in the manual before, you have to actually appeal to federal highway, and then it is a research-driven process. So there's before and after studies. You have to monitor it. At any time, they can tell you to remove that device. And so the flashing yellow arrow, which is still fairly new as far as traffic control devices go, it had a 10-year formal experimentation process before it was introduced into the manual. The use of the manual is codified here at the local, state, and federal level. So not only should we use it because it's a good thing to have uniform traffic control devices, I have to use it because I am legally required to as an engineer. And so this little sign group to the side I found on the internet, this is why we need a manual to apply uniform traffic control devices. So this is at the end of a divided highway. So you can imagine there's a median. Well, somebody did not follow the manual. They said, well, you've got to turn left or right. This direction is one way and this other direction is one way. That's a confusing sign assembly. We would not be allowed to use that had we followed the manual. The other thing that's worth mentioning is that federal and state funding cannot be used on any project that does not fully comply with the manual. So if a TxDOT-driven project is going in, that manual is a big part of the design process. I know that Kenny Horn, they would understand that. And then another big thing is litigation often highlights exceptions in compliance. So if you have a major crash or you have a major incident, lawyers are going to be looking to see, did you apply the manual properly? Did you comply with all of the state and federal guidelines that are codified? So this is a city ordinance that has adopted a manual for specifications for traffic control devices. I'm not going to read all of these. I just want to let you know that it exists and it is in our code. And same thing for the state code. It's a little longer because it's the state level. And then same thing in federal code. So the federal is the only one that mentions the actual MUTCD. The other ones talk about a manual developed by AASHTO, but AASHTO has formally adopted MUTCD, so it's still codified. So here are some definitions that you'll find in the MUTCD. A standard is a statement of required, mandatory, or specifically prohibited practice regarding a traffic control device. So standards have no exceptions. They're in the manual, you must do this. You must use a sign in this way. You must place it this way, or you must never do this. So operating traffic signals, I must show a yellow before every red. There are no exceptions. And off to the side here, I show a little example of actual excerpts from the MUTCD. So that is a standard talking about stop signs. And the language is very technical, but I guess that's why not. Guidance, options, and support are lower level statements, but guidance is still the most restrictive non-standardized language. So basically, if it's in a guidance statement, you should do it unless you have a really good reason not to do it based on an engineering study or an engineering judgment. Most of the application of stop signs is guidance, but unless we go do a formal study that says, well, we can do an exception here, we should follow guidance. Options and support are a little more open-ended. They just kind of tell you, here's different ways you can do things. Here's your different ways that you're allowed to put something or not something. Options are, it's kind of self-explanatory. You don't always have to put up something. So TMUTCD section 2B06 talks about stop sign applications. So I bolded, anything that's bold beyond this point is just my emphasis. It's not the manual's emphasis, but it's the really important part that I wanted to point out. So at intersections where a full stop is not necessary at all times, consideration should first be given to using less restrictive measures such as yield signs. So that tells me right away the manual doesn't want me to make people stop unnecessarily. It wants to keep traffic flowing, and it wants the necessary stops to be easy to see and easy to recognize. If I put a stop sign at every single intersection down the street, it's going to be really difficult for the driver to tell which ones of those have a high hazard and which ones of those are just like, well, maybe they're trying to slow me down. So that is why we don't use stop signs for speed control. We want the hazard or the situation that requires a full stop to be readily visible to the driver. They talk about using stop signs on minor street approaches first, and then this is some of the details of what can go into a study if you want to apply a stop sign. We always look at vehicular and pedestrian volumes. We always look at restricted views. So if you can't see down the road, like a lot of the intersections downtown where you see an all-way stop, it's because you physically can't see down the road to see if someone's coming. So we stop all the vehicles coming into the intersection, and that way it's safe. And then crash records are kind of a reactive measure. If every year when we look at crashes, if we see a lot of crashes happening in the intersection, we're like, well, maybe we need to put some stop signs. Multi-way stop applications. So even more text, it's really tiny currently. So the decision to install multi-way stop should be based on an engineering study. So we do not typically automatically throw up all-way stops unless we go look at the site and do a formal study. And then here's the criteria that the manual says we should use in a study for a multi-way stop application. And essentially, it's the same criteria that you see for just a regular stop, but all of the standards are brought up. So it's higher volumes, more pedestrian activity, more crashes, and that sort of thing keeps us from overusing this traffic control device. So City of Lubbock typical applications, so through the planning process that we talked about in the design of neighborhoods, we usually install yield signs to control lower volume approaches to any uncontrolled four-legged intersection to minimize traffic confusion. So Texas state law takes care of those intersections as a first come, first served basis. You're supposed to yield to anybody that's already there. But we do get complaints, and it is kind of a confusing situation because you can't always see all the way down the road. So if we get a citizen request, we automatically put up yield signs, we assign the right of way. That, again, does not require a full stop. So we are complying with the manual in that regard. Stop sign implications are typically for any intersections that intersect with a roadway that functions as a collector or an arterial. So the arterial is obvious, like if you're coming up an arterial, we want you to stop. That's a higher speed, higher volume roadway, you need to give way. Any roadway that functions as a collector could be any through street going through a neighborhood where we expect higher volumes and we expect more traffic. But we want to keep that traffic moving, and we don't want to stop them unnecessarily. So we put up stop signs on the side streets of those. And then also near schools to improve traffic flow and pedestrian safety. So if you've ever been near one of our neighborhood streets or neighborhood schools when they get in or out, it is a very congested, very busy situation. And so we do apply stop signs, always stops, at the corners of those schools in most situations to help kind of calm traffic, let the pedestrians get across, you know, generally keep things as organized as you can in that chaotic situation. When it comes to an actual engineering study where we've had a stop sign request where we see crashes outside of our normal ranges, these are the things that we look at before we apply stop signs. So we go and we see how far can you see down the road. And the sight distance is a function of not only just how far you can see, but how fast is the traffic. So if it's a 40-mile-an-hour roadway, we need to be able to see further down the road to make our decision. We look at vehicular and pedestrian bicycle volumes. So generally, the higher the pedestrian volume, the easier it is to install a stop sign or a multi-way stop because pedestrians take a longer time to cross the street. So it makes sense to stop the vehicles to give them a gap. And then left turn volume on single lane approaches. So if we have a high left turn volume on a single lane approach and there are no stop signs, that one vehicle that wants to turn left can hold up a long line of vehicles behind it. And then that can result in unsafe behavior for drivers and then also just a lot of delay in general. So we may apply an always stop in that situation so that that left turn driver only has to stop and then they get to go at the next moment. And we always look at crash history. So anytime we see crashes at intersections, we know that we need more control. And we actually have a graduated approach. So there are some situations where in a neighborhood, we already have an always stop and we still see a high crash history. Then we'll go in with stop ahead warnings or flashing stop signs or something like that. We try to keep treating the intersection until the problem is gone. So potential always stop sign control problems. So this photo shows you a pretty crazy example, but it highlights the problems that you can create by misapplying traffic control. So this would be an approach with an incredibly high volume on one leg, and stop sign, an always stop sign controlled intersection, the higher the volume on any given approach, the higher delay that approach will receive. So if you have one leg of an intersection that has a really high volume and the others don't, because you're stopping every single vehicle, the lower volume approaches will see virtually no delay, and then the higher volume approach will see undue delay. And that is definitely not what we want to do when people are trying to go home in the afternoon. You know, we want to treat the traffic equally and keep it going. So let's talk about that. Lower compliance is another issue that we'll run into. So stop sign installations that don't meet MUTCD criteria can lead to less respect for all stop signs. And you've seen drivers rolling past stop signs, potentially overlooking hazards. Well, we find that increases in areas where there are more and more stop signs. And then also it reduces neighborhood quality of life. So vehicles stopping, idling, and accelerating create more noise in neighborhoods. We don't want, kind of as the flip of the coin, we don't want traffic going faster than the legal speed limit, but we also don't want it going really slow or accelerating or creating a lot of noise and pollution for the neighborhoods. Drivers tend to accelerate more quickly and achieve higher peak speeds when they're required to stop more often. And you've seen that if you go through like a parking lot and you see speed bumps, you may slow way down for that speed bump and then you might find yourself accelerating to make up for that lost time. Well, in a neighborhood, we would much rather just have a consistent normal speed. So proper use, this is text from the MUTCD. Yield or stop signs should not be used for speed control. I have a picture of a police car here because they are the ones that are going to both enforce the speed limit and enforce stop signs or yield signs. And they already have a hard enough job trying to take care of traffic everywhere else. We don't want to make their job even harder by the officer having to decide, well, is that stop sign really, do they really need to stop? Did they roll through that? You know, that sort of thing. Safety concerns associated with multi-way stops include pedestrians, bicyclists, and all road users expecting other road users to stop. So we don't want to put up a multi-way stop sign installation unless drivers are going to expect everybody to be stopping. It just kind of makes sense at that point. Multi-way stop sign control is used where the volume of traffic on the intersecting roads is approximately equal. And that goes back to the volume to capacity ratios. We don't want to have undue delay on one approach. So then this comes back to controlling operating speeds. We go back full circle. So if we're not supposed to use yield or stop signs to control operating speed, then what should we do? Well, a roadway's operating speed is largely a result of its design. So long stretches of relatively straight, you have to do the office with you. Long stretches of relatively straight and wide roadway with few obstacles will result in higher vehicle speeds. We know this. This is not just a knee-jerk reaction. The Institute of Traffic or Transportation Engineers have done study after study, so has Federal Highway, that shows that this is fact. If you give drivers a wide open path, they will go faster. And it's just human nature. You know? So I have a couple photos here showing some differences. So the upper photo is like a suburban street, big open spaces, lots of room. I would expect much higher speeds there than I would on this urban street where you have cars lining both sides of the street. You've got maybe even a truck double parked, you've got a pedestrian, two pedestrians. That's the kind of situation that's going to naturally bring speeds down and make people be a little more careful. So speed limits on neighborhood streets are generally set by statute. So we don't go in and pick a speed limit for every single street in the city. They are all 30, and then we raise the ones that we want to be higher. So if the street design does not match that 30-mile-an-hour statute set speed limit, we will see speed. We just know it. So the best way to prevent speeding is to design neighborhood streets to constrain speed. And that goes back to David's presentation. Basically, you want to put those traffic calming devices into the design of the street. And that will keep people from speeding physically instead of just by a sign. Oh, there we go. So geometry should manage speed. That is the big takeaway we want y'all to take from this is stop signs are not used to manage speed. They're used to manage intersection right away. These types of devices are used to manage speed. So we can put in roundabouts, which again doesn't make anybody fully stop, but it has an element of geometry that even if you're going straight through, you have to curve a couple of times. Or we can put in things like speed humps in a retrofit situation where we don't already have the roundabout or we don't have a curvy street or lots of intersections. And I'm past my wonderful questions.
Does anybody have any questions? That's what he meant to say.
Oh, two people are using the computer once.
Oh, David's trying to.
Chase them out.
There we go.
So that's me, that's my contact information. If you don't have any questions today, you can email me, call me. Is there anybody in the heavens that has a question?
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
We
Will. Great
appreciate it.
information. I think we're ready for item 5.2, discussion regarding police department activity reports. One representative, would you like to give a report?
For Lubbock, we've had 12 fatalities this year, 14 deaths, 2 of them were double fatalities. That's half of what we were at this time last year. Our overall crashes were down by about 20%. We attribute that to the COVID. Because people are staying home and not getting out.
Students from Quan, does that have something to play in there? Or?
Yeah, but the ones that were the ones that went to other colleges were back home.
Okay.
So you don't have the traffic around Tech, but they're all staying at folks' house or renting their own other apartments.
Our peaks are way down. So we have, even though the traffic has come back up, it's not doing this every day. It's more like a plateau and it comes back down. We're not even running our peak timing plans right now at all, except on Milwaukee. So kind of interesting.
Well, I believe that covers all of the agenda items today. Anything else anybody would like to?
We do have the citizen request report. I'm just going to say, everybody read through it. If you have any questions, you can ask now or send an email. We have been real busy, and this is the list since last November.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a lot of them. There's a lot pending because we've got to do some counts that we can't do. But look over this. If you got any questions, feel free to call or email.
Okay.
So are you saying these are the people that have filled out applications?
No,
No.
these are all they've either called or been transferred to our department, and it's not just speeding concerns. Some of them want stop signs, some of them do want speed cushions, someone wanted one-way sign, loading and unloading in the street, or something that has to do with TxDOT roadways, we refer those.
Yeah.
All of the different ones.
Did I hear you say earlier that this is up? The number of requests with
The
people
number
at
of
home
requests.
and they've got time on their hands, so they call in.
They're really looking at the neighborhood.
Yeah. Everybody's at home.
See, before it was just, hey, I gotta go to work, I got time. So now it's like, I've seen that car 6 times.
And he's been speeding every time.
I don't think I'd ever heard the garbage trucks.
Right.
Well, so I just want to remind all the members, if you would email Bonnie and let us know if you are interested in serving as a chair or vice chair. And I guess our next meeting, we will take those nominations and then vote.
That is scheduled for the 18th of August. So if you want to mark that I know I bombard y'all with emails, and I do apologize.
Great presentations. Thank all, both of you. And I guess we'll adjourn today's meeting.
Y'all,
Appreciate it.
Good job.
Y'all appreciate it.